Geeks, I've got some of the most major news to share with you the world has completely blown up over and we need to discuss. Ben Affleck and JLo are back together. I don't have the energy for this. We got a lot to discuss, but before we start, do me a favor since we are at the 1-year anniversary of Oh My World, and please hit that subscribe button below, tell your friends about the show, and give me some positive feedback and love by clicking the like button. So a lot's been going on in Israel and Gaza, and this issue has become so wildly controversial that you basically can't say anything without someone throwing biblical references and then tomatoes at you. It's okay, I'm prepared. Buckle up, because I'm giving you the full picture. Tensions started a month ago at the beginning of Ramadan, which is a holy month most Palestinians observe. Israeli police had tried to set up blockades to prevent some public Palestinian festivities that usually take place in a public square, which resulted in protests and clashes. From there, tensions grew, and a march by hundreds of supporters of a far-right Jewish organization that wanted to confront Palestinians who were clashing with the police sparked additional violence. Meanwhile, young Palestinians launched a revolting campaign on TikTok where they would film themselves slapping, harassing, or beating up religious Jews. So then young Jews started attacking Palestinians in downtown West Jerusalem. So now you have regular Israeli and Palestinian citizens and mobs trying to take matters into their own hands, and fueled by social media. But it doesn't end there. We've barely scratched the surface. At the same time, a plan to evict 6 Palestinian families from a predominantly Arab neighborhood in East Jerusalem called Sheikh Jarrah unfolded. Good timing, I know. So protesting and fighting between Israeli settlers and Palestinians grew further, but things turned really ugly this week. On Monday, Palestinians protested the evictions and a march that was planned for Jerusalem Day, which is a national holiday when Israelis celebrate the annexation of Jerusalem. This march would have been pretty provocative, since far-right Israeli settlers would have marched through the Muslim quarters of Jerusalem's Old City. That culminated into clashes at the Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Old City of Jerusalem during prayers, where Palestinians threw stones at the police, who responded by storming the mosque and firing tear gas and rubber bullets. I'm not done yet. Hamas, which is a terrorist organization based in Gaza, saw an opportunity to take advantage of these clashes and turned them into widespread conflict by firing hundreds of rockets into Israel, including at Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, which have so far resulted in 6 deaths, including 1 child. Which goes to show you, by the way, that Hamas could give 2 shits about Palestinian lives, since both Israelis and Palestinians live in Jerusalem. So Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu vowed the response would be overwhelming. And so far, Israel has pursued heavy airstrikes in Gaza that have resulted in over 65 deaths, including 16 children. And the airstrikes and missiles from each side continue. Now, the US and international community are begging for both sides to de-escalate and stop the violence because they're worried this could turn into an all-out war. The White House response could have been stronger, but we'll get to that later. Having witnessed these conflicts in this region before, they usually linger for a few weeks and end with a shaky ceasefire. But that doesn't mean this shouldn't be taken seriously, especially when you have innocent lives at stake. Look, I'm gonna be super real with you on this issue. At the end of the day, this violence is happening because the Palestinians don't have a state and have in many ways been oppressed by Israeli authorities and Israeli law. Blockading Palestinian Ramadan festivities is emblematic to Palestinians of the humility and lack of dignity they feel in this region on a daily basis. And whatever the Israelis want to say on the evictions, that this is a private real estate matter, or that this was land that was owned by the Jewish trusts back into the 1800s and it was purchased by Israeli settlers, the eviction is an effort to eliminate Palestinian presence from the area. Now, before you think I'm taking sides, think again. The Palestinians are also a problem. Those TikTok videos were absolutely shameful. And now Hamas's response and an effort to turn this into an all-out war is disgusting, because they know how the Israeli military responds. So Hamas is putting both innocent Israeli and Palestinian civilian lives at risk. Now, if you're hoping for the Israeli and Palestinian leadership to stop this conflict, then you're going to be hoping for a while. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is feckless and corrupt, and he has no control over Hamas, and that's his own damn fault. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's hanging on by a thread, has no real interest in ending the violence, because the more conflict there is, the more public support he gets. There's only one solution to putting an end to this decades-long mess, and that's by creating a Palestinian state and letting each side govern themselves within their own borders like normal people. Trust me, there is no point of getting into an argument of who started what and who did what, because we will end up going back hundreds of years to argue over who owns which olive tree. And while I see everyone out there expressing sadness and empathy, I am pissed. Because the only reason these two sides suffer the way they do, and the only reason they and we have spent millions on conflict and why innocents are dying, is because fundamentally each side is too stubborn. So I understand why the White House is tired of this conflict. I get it. It's lose-lose. But no matter how much the White House wants to avoid this conflict, it won't avoid the White House. So if I were President Biden, I would find ways to twist the arms of political and community leaders on both sides and tell them that if they don't stop acting like children with guns and figure out a way to make a Palestinian state, then this conflict will last forever. Only with a two-state solution can both finally move forward and stop arguing over who makes better hummus and falafel. Both of you make it good. A criminal group based in Russia that's called DarkSide is believed to have committed a ransomware cyber attack on Colonial Pipeline, which is a company in Texas that supplies most of the eastern United States with gasoline. In fact, they transport more than 100 million gallons of gas and other fuel daily from Houston to the New York harbor, and the pipeline shutdown ended up causing some gas shortages and inflation. Though some of that is because people panicked and rushed to get gas, which ended up causing a shortage. It's not toilet paper, people. But this attack actually highlights a major threat and vulnerability that we don't talk about enough. A ransomware attack is basically when a cybercriminal hacks your system and locks all the files up until you pay a ransom. And in this instance, and many others you don't hear about, these ransomware criminals operate out of Russia, often with the Russian government's tacit approval. These thugs have previously attacked our schools, state and local government agencies, and healthcare facilities, and the problem only seems to be getting worse. More than $350 million were paid as a result of ransomware in the past year, and the rate of these attacks has increased over the prior year by over 300%. This is a mess I'm too afraid to even think about, so I've brought on my friend, total badass, and former U.S. Treasury Assistant Secretary for Intelligence and Analysis, Leslie Ireland, to break it down for us. Leslie helped lead Treasury's efforts to assist the financial sector in cybersecurity. She was also National Intelligence Manager for Threat Finance at the Directorate for National Intelligence and the President's Daily Intelligence Briefer from 2008 to 2010. I told you she's badass.
Hi, Leslie. It's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Hagar. It is so much fun to be back in the trenches with you again.
Yes, I wish, fighting the bad guys. Listen, this is some scary shit. This ransomware attack really exposed our vulnerabilities. How significant is this threat, and why should this matter to the regular American?
That's a great question, Hagar, and I know there's been a lot of this in the press. So basically, Colonial Pipeline is part of our critical infrastructure, and that includes 16 sectors. So it's energy, communications, food and agriculture, finance, you name it. And these are all areas that touch the everyday lives of the regular American, as you call them. And when there's this kind of an attack, these disruptions can be felt regionally, or they could very well be felt nationally. Now, like the rest of our country, these sectors are connected to the internet for many of their functions. And there are vulnerabilities in this because some of these systems are really aging and not up to date. So you couple these vulnerabilities with the growing number of ransomware attacks that we've been seeing over the last year or so. And you do have a significant threat. You have a weakness, you have a challenge. The most sensitive systems in these sectors are called industrial control systems. And the industrial control system is used to control the operations or the automations of the industrial process. Now, my understanding is that the attack on the Colonial Pipeline did not penetrate the industrial control system, and that when they shut down the pipeline, it was merely out of an abundance of caution. But this still is a lesson to be learned of what could happen if, in fact, an actor was able to penetrate the operational systems of the critical infrastructure.
And so what more do you think needs to be done to address these types of cyber attacks?
So my perspective is that cybersecurity is a team sport. And what do I mean by that? We need to think about our responses to cybersecurity as individuals and as a collective, because our reliance on the internet means that we are inextricably connected and interdependent. Now, a cyber actor will look for the weakest link. And that means, this interconnectedness means that the entry point may not be the ultimate target. So I believe that this collective response needs to include looking at expanding and strengthening the existing public-private partnerships that we already have. Really, government, private sector, both sides have information that could benefit the other, whether it's on cyber trends and threats, lessons learned from an attack, or how to build in better operational resiliency. So how do you withstand an attack, and then how do you recover from it once you're out from under it? Fact is, we'll need champions to make this work, and it's not going to be easy. There are going to be concerns on both sides. So companies will be concerned about privacy, legal, proprietary issues, and the government's going to be concerned about sources and methods, as we love to call them. But I'm hopeful that we're moving in the right direction. I think you saw in the news yesterday that President Biden announced an executive order titled Improving the Nation's Cybersecurity, and it included language in there to remove some of the barriers to sharing information. And I'd also like to encourage your listeners, because actually they are assembling what I consider to be the A team to cover cyber. They've got a lot of current and former NSA officers who are coming in to hold the key posts, and I'm confident they understand the threat, and they have the commitment to take it forward.
I have no doubt. I feel confident about it too, that we'll get this under control. Thanks, Leslie.
Great.
This has been so insightful.
Thank you, Hagar. Take care.
3 years ago, Saudi officers arrested humanitarian aid worker Abdul Rahman al-Sadhan at the Red Crescent headquarters in Riyadh where he worked. 2 plainclothes thugs just barged in and kidnapped him without a warrant or justification for his arrest, and his family had no idea of his whereabouts for 2 years. The charges against him were related to tweets he had posted anonymously from a parody Twitter account that criticized the Saudi government and the religious establishment. And his identity was revealed by 2 Saudi spies and Twitter employees who had been stealing information from Twitter. Well, last month, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by a 20-year travel ban. For tweeting! He's been in prison for the past 3 years, where he has suffered torture like electrocution, flogging, and suspension in stress positions, among other terrible experiences. He was forced to sign documents while blindfolded and has not been able to choose legal counsel during sham trials. Last week, his sister authored a powerful op-ed where she implored U.S. officials to call on Saudi Arabia to release her brother and to punish the crown prince with sanctions. As she notes, the Saudi crown prince works hard to maintain this false image of a modern king, and meanwhile he brutally cracks down on any kind of peaceful dissent. She herself has faced harassment from Saudi government online trolls and was once followed by a man likely linked to the Saudi embassy when she was in Norway for a human rights conference. The thing I don't get is that the Saudi crown prince does everything he can to silence anyone who criticizes the monarchy, but by doing so, it makes everyone else who speaks for the voiceless even louder. I really hope that al-Sadhan gets released and that the crown prince pays for his criminality. In the meantime, he's on my shit list this week. President Biden has raised the cap on the number of refugees the U.S. can admit this year from 15,000 to 62,500. We probably won't get near this number because of our own bureaucracy, but it got me excited to feature an organization recommended by my researcher, Sydney, called Hello Future. Hello Future was founded by a New Yorker badass named Charlie Grosso, and it's a nonprofit organization that works to bridge the education gap for teen refugees. At this age, refugees often start to feel forgotten, alone, or just stuck, and like they have no bright future ahead of them, and that's where Hello Future steps in. They teach skills like digital literacy, financial literacy, media literacy, entrepreneurship, critical thinking, problem solving, and storytelling. And they give these teenagers the foundation they need to become entrepreneurs and community leaders. They even have a small business incubator for refugees. As they say, they give young refugees a sense of purpose and a pathway to a livelihood that avoids radicalization and early marriage. But most importantly, they give them a sense of hope. War is ugly, and displaced people and refugees are often the collateral damage. But a program like this gives them a way out and a way to move forward, and ultimately, that's priceless. Thanks for watching, Geeks, and happy 1-year anniversary to Oh My World. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Oh My World. Happy birthday to you. No one ever gets those notes right, so you're welcome. Give Oh My World a gift, and please subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Stay fabulous, Geeks.